On today's show, we're talking about what Jack Leiter needs to do to earn a rotation spot out at camp, what Tyler Mahle's injury means, and what Jacob deGrom is doing to try and keep himself healthy for this season and years to come. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, the first and best daily Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Paddock, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Paddock. Follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, on today's show, we're talking about Jack Leiter looking mostly good, a little bad in his most recent start in spring training, a little bit of an injury scare with Tyler Mahle. We're talking a little bit about Jacob deGrom and a couple of prospects hitting 100 on the gun, why they might just make this Rangers pen out of camp. But let's get into Jack Leiter first. The story of yesterday's game was most definitely Jack Leiter. Overall, a pretty decent outing for him. He ended up being the starter in yesterday's game against the Angels, went 2 2/3 innings, allowed just 1 hit, 1 run, which was earned, which actually didn't come until Matt Festa came in with the bases loaded and hit a batter with, I believe, the first pitch that he threw in that relief outing. But 5 walks for Jack. Not what you're looking for. 5 strikeouts, much more what you're looking for. He ended up throwing 59 pitches, a little bit more than, actually exactly 1 more than what would have been halfway. Half of those pitches were called strikes, or ended up being strikes. But overall, it was kind of an epitome of Jack Leiter Day. I mean, he looked exceptional, but he was nibbling just a little bit. But he was nibbling in the right ways. Tyler Mahle was scratched due to some forearm tightness. It was just an abundance of caution. It was something that he could have pitched through. They wanted to just get ahead of it. He's just not looked good this spring in terms of his velocity. It was about an hour before the game where he ended up getting scratched. They don't plan to give him an MRI. They're not, too concerned about it. Assistant GM Ross Fenstermaker said it's still at the point of spring where we've got time. It was something he felt he could push through and pitch today, but we didn't feel it was necessary, so we're just playing it on the conservative side. So just a little bit of forearm soreness is how he described it. So in comes Jack Leiter, who was definitely already going to pitch in this game anyway, and for the most part, he looked exceptional. I mean, the stuff was fantastic. The fastball ran all the way up to 99.8 miles an hour, which does make the radar gun read 100 miles an hour, which he was not the only one making the radar gun read 100 miles an hour. We'll talk more about Emiliano Teodo and the other Rangers bullpen hopeful who made that gun read 100 miles an hour. But let's look a little bit at this pitch chart. Look at where these pitches are. Look at where the fastballs are. Look at where the misses are specifically. They're up above the zone where his fastball plays best, where he can't be hurt. You look at a lot of those pitches, the slider he was not really able to locate for strikes. He was throwing it in good spots. I mean, off the plate, it was, off there to righties. It was exactly where you would want to throw it. Just wasn't getting as many chases. He's living on the edges of those zones. Just the one thing that he really needs at this point is just to be a little bit more in the zone. Just a little bit, because Jack Leiter's spring reminds me a little bit of Cole Reagan's spring in 2023. Now, Reagan's, no, they were both first-round picks. They were both guys who at some point had a whole lot of, prospect pedigree on him, but their journeys through the minors, and the reason their prospect stock fell quite a bit was different. Also, they throw with different hands. But the main thing is they both came into camp after a year of setbacks the year before, but still progress, and they were throwing a whole lot harder. For Jack, it's about 2 miles an hour harder. He's averaging 98 miles an hour as opposed to 96 and a half. Whereas for Reagan's, he was averaging 92 miles an hour the year before, and then comes into camp touching 100 for the first time ever and sitting in the mid-90s, 95, 96 was what he averaged on that four-seam fastball, which was a huge jump. And out of camp, the Rangers had some veterans in their rotation, mainly Martin Perez, coming off of a fantastic season, but just didn't look that good in spring. There were some other starters who maybe could have fallen out of the starting rotation for Cole Reagans at the beginning of 2023, but Reagan should have won a job at a camp. He should have. And then he didn't win a role in the bullpen, and then he got sent to the minors and came back up and just showed some moments before ultimately the Rangers traded him in a move of desperation to the Kansas City Royals. We all saw how that worked out. He ended up being incredible. Hopefully the Rangers don't do that with Jack Leiter. I don't think they're going to trade him to Boston for that same reliever in an attempt to try and win a World Series this year. If they do that again and they end up with another World Series, maybe I'll be less pissed, but I'll probably still be a little pissed. But anyway, with Tyler Mahle, if he's sitting 90, 91 as opposed to 93, 94, 95 like he's sat in years past, it makes him a significantly less effective pitcher. He just hasn't quite had it. When he came back for a couple of starts, 3 starts to be specific, last year, he looked fine, not great. He had one good start, a couple of not great starts, and then shoulder soreness kind of took him out. Whereas with Leiter, it seems like he is fighting for a rotation spot right now. Him and Rocker. Right now, it seems like Leiter has a little bit of an edge. But with Jack, if you go back and you look at those pitches, I mean, they're mostly around the zone. Just a little bit of an uptick in zone percentage is what he needs. I mean, he had 42% of his pitches in the strike zone in that game. Not quite league average. League average is around 48%. So he's still getting a lot of swings and misses. He's getting a lot of chases out of the zone. He's throwing his pitches not in the middle of the zone where they can get hurt. I mean, the curveball looked exceptional in that game. The changeup was downright disgusting. I mean, he got it all the way up to 95.7 miles an hour with the changeup. It's the kick change, the new kick change that he's working on. It was working incredibly effectively. I mean, he got 5 swings and misses on 8 swings on that. He got 3 swings and misses on 10 swings on the four-seam fastball. Got a whiff on the sinker, got a whiff on the slider, got a whiff on the one swing they took on the curveball, which was in the zone. All 3 pitches that he threw, he got a swing and a miss in the zone. He got a called strike in the zone. Then he had a curveball in the zone that was not called a strike, that should have been called a strike. But they weren't swinging and making contact at as high a rate on average of the stuff he's throwing in the zone. It just needs to be just a little bit more in the zone, just a little bit more, because Reagan's, he throws left-handed, he throws a little bit less hard than Jack, but he's also a guy who's gonna walk a little bit more than his fair share. But the league average for strike zone percentage of just pitches in the zone is around 48.7%. Last year, Cole Reagans was at 48% even. So just a little bit more of an uptick that will get more swings and misses, more chases, to get hitters to respect that he can and will throw pitches in the zone. And I think he's right there. I mean, one of the things that Jack Leiter talked about after the game was that he's not that far off. I mean, he's really not. It's not that much of a difference between, him going 4 or 5 innings in this one versus him going 2 2/3 and walking 5. I mean, one of his walks shouldn't have even been a walk. There was a ball 3 I think it was ball 3, not ball 4, called a ball that should have been called a strike, and he should have had a strikeout looking. But one of the things that Jack Leiter said is it's always small differences between the good and the bad innings. It's not like they're all of a sudden all the way off. It just wasn't landing off speed in early counts, and pitching behind is tough, especially against good hitters. That's what Jack Leiter had to say after this, and I agree. I completely agree. He's not that far off. He's maybe not quite there just yet in terms of the pitcher that he can be, but with that new sinker, with that new changeup, I mean, after last year, after when he was first drafted, the thought is, at his best, he could be a number 2 in a rotation. The thought was never, this guy's going to win a Cy Young, or he could be, the next iteration of Jacob deGrom, Nolan Ryan, whatever. That was not on the table. But the floor with him was, maybe a 4, maybe 5, but he was going to be a starting pitcher. Then after consecutive years in Double-A, where he just looked like he not only lost his composure, but his swagger, he was making the same mistakes over and over again. And, progression of these pitchers, it's not a linear path. It's so random of, guys like these two have just, oh, hey, what if I just came into spring training one year throwing a completely new pitch? And what if my four-seam fastball just jumped way up and was, a whole lot harder and a whole lot better? It's like, okay, well, sure. After 2 years of just kind of sitting there and being the same pitcher, he made progress last year and then comes into spring training, looked like a completely new pitcher. I mean, he also just didn't get rattled when he was walking a whole bunch of guys, when he was, just missing his spots. When he had runners on base, he didn't get over his head. He didn't get overwhelmed. He didn't let the inning spiral into a big inning. He just buckled down and dominated. He's got that mindset. He's got that mentality figured out. He's looks to be, just playing armchair pitcher psychologist, in a much, much better position. But how could he be right now? And what would Tyler Mahle's injury, if it spirals, what would it lead to? Is it Rocker? Is it Leiter? Or is it someone else making the fifth spot in this rotation? Talk about all that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios are one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. When I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. These no-shell varieties, they're so easy to just grab and go no matter what you're doing, whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids. Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works just as hard as you do. So get snackin' and get crackin' with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, we'll be talking a little bit about Cody Bradford, a little about whatever is going on in this game. Who knows exactly what's going to go on in the first Rangers televised game. We'll talk a little bit about how to watch this first game and all these spring training games that are being broadcast. But I don't want to get off of Jack Leiter just yet. I think that he's almost there in terms of, is he ready if Tyler Mahle does go down for an extended period of time, or just if he is... There is, 10%, 10 to 15, 20-ish% of people who come back from Tommy John and just who don't come back from Tommy John. There is a possibility. I don't want to say that, because the Rangers, he had a little bit of forearm tightness, but it's all of that combined of Mahle, with the velocity being down, with him not looking quite as effective, with him experiencing this forearm tightness, and in addition to him taking a little bit longer to come back than the Rangers expected from that Tommy John surgery, and with him being shut down again at the end of the year, and him not finishing the season fully healthy and fully, good, like we were hoping or expecting. And this year, the outlook looking a little bit more pessimistic. There's a possibility that this is all just fine, and he ends up, the velocity ticking way back up, makes his next start, is ready for his first start of the season, whether that's game, 2, 3, 4. Not 5, because that's deGrom. Not 1, because that's going to be Nathan Eovaldi. But maybe we're overblowing it. But if not, if we want to go to that, the worst case scenario, is Jack Leiter ready right now to be a starting pitcher in the big leagues? I think he could be okay. I think right now, even with his problems of staying in the zone, again, I don't think he's that far off. But I think if he plugged him into the Rangers rotation right now, I think he's a 4 or a 5. In a good rotation. That may sound like, what a failure. The Rangers got the number 2 overall pick and he ends up being a 4 or 5. I'm not saying for his whole career he's a number 4 or 5 starter in your rotation. Even if that's the case, with the Rangers' lack of a track record of developing even competent back-end rotation starting pitchers, that's still a developmental win, especially from where he was a year ago, where the thought was maybe he's a really nasty closer, maybe he's just a mediocre middle reliever. That's kind of where we were with Jack, but he's not there. He's no longer there. For me, heading into the spring training, I thought, okay, the floor for Jack is probably, really nasty 8th inning, 9th inning reliever. I thought that's probably the worst, and I thought maybe the ceiling was like maybe a number 3 starter, maybe a number 4 starter. But with the new sinker, with the new changeup, and how nasty those have looked, even with his problems of staying in the zone, I think that ceiling is back to maybe at his best he's a number 2 starter. Again, he's still a long way to go, but I think if you plug him in right now and that's your 4 or 5 starter, that's a big win. And one last thing I want to hammer home from this game of just how incredibly nasty he was. He threw 59 pitches. Again, would have liked to see him be a little bit more in the zone. Would have liked to have seen a little bit more swing and miss from the slider. Wasn't the best slider day. That's fine. They still swung and missed it at half the time they swung it. Only 2 swings, 1 swing and miss. It's fine. Would like to see that be in the zone a little bit more. Same with the 4-seam fastball. Same with the sinker. What have you. Blah, 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 blah. The Angels took 25 swings at pitches that Jack Leiter threw. Of the 59, they took 25 swings. They swung and missed 11 times. That's 44% of those swings. They fouled it off 12 times. Okay, how many swings is that left? The balls put in play. 2. They put 2 balls in play against Jack Leiter in 59 pitches. That's insane. One of them was a hard hit ball looped into the right field for a single. I believe that was 104.5 miles an hour off the bat. Next one, not a hard hit ball. The 87.8 miles an hour for a weak ground out. That's it. Those are the 2 balls they put in play in 2 2/3 innings against Jack. That's how nasty his stuff was. That's not something you see very often, if almost ever. That should just put you in context of like, oh, well, he wasn't in the zone. Oh, he throwing a bunch of balls. Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Just look at how insane that is, of how little they were able to do with his stuff. If he was in the zone, it was not being touched. He was in the zone, he was living on the edge of the zone. If he was missing the zone, he was missing it in the right places. This is the Jack Leiter we were hoping to see. This is the progress. Still not a finished product. Still not sure if he's ready for the Rangers opening day rotation. If it's not him, I'm not quite sure about Rocker just yet. I'd like to see him in another spring game. Again, was working on his mechanics of aligning the top half and the bottom half of his delivery. They weren't quite in sync, just milliseconds off. He looked much better in the Saturday B game that he pitched in. But again, even with Rocker, we'll see if he's fully healthy and everything, how much of an innings limit they put on him. With Jack, there's not those injury concerns. It's just a matter of him getting, those tweaks to be an effective starting pitcher in the zone, all that blah, 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 blah that we need for Jack Leiter. And so maybe ends up being Adrian Hauser, who, by the way, in his last start, the fastball was up a couple of ticks from where it was a year ago. That's not insignificant for him. I think there's a chance that Hauser could surpass Dane Dunning for the guy who just slots into that rotation if there's an injury to Tyler Mahle, if he has to start the season on the IL, or if he misses an extended chunk of time. I think that it could be the way that it goes about. They'd have to make a 40-man spot if it is Hauser as opposed to Dane Dunning, and right now I think that would be Luis Carvello, who would be the 40-man spot who the Rangers would take away. They also want guys with options in this pen, so maybe Jack Leiter. I think most definitely he could be an effective multi-inning reliever right now, but I would rather start him in Double-A, get him those reps of going through an order multiple times through, of sticking with building up to 100 pitches to that normal starter's workload, and figuring out how to be in the zone more often, because that's something that he can work on and do against minor league hitters. Again, he's much better than minor league hitters right now, but the chasm, the distance between AAA and the big leagues right now is an absolute chasm. So he still has some things that he can work on, still has some things that he can get better. If the Rangers do want to go with Leiter, I think he's very, very close to being big league ready, even to the point where he might force the issue at some. I think he's very close in that maybe May, maybe it's June. He could force the issue of somebody in this rotation losing their spot, not because they pitch poorly, but because Jack Leiter is just that good. The same could be said for Kumar Rocker, but with Rocker, there's more of an innings limit, more of a kid gloves, for lack of a better term, that they're going to be playing with Rocker, which is why I'm higher on what Jack can do for the full season of him jumping into this rotation. Also, he's just looked a little bit better this spring than Rocker. Again, Rocker's ceiling is number 1 potential Cy Young vote getter, guy who you feel good about starting game 1 of a playoff game, which is an ace. Jack Leiter's ceiling is not quite that, but both these guys, very, very good. Very, very positive developments for them. Positive developments for Rangers fans that you're going to see a Rangers game on TV if you have CW33. That's going to be today at 3 p.m. Central Time. It is going to be on, like I said, the CW33 for all of my research. I'm pretty sure it's on channel 33. It's on Spectrum. It is on, I believe, DirecTV as well. And those will be, all the Rangers home games will be on those channels. Also, if you have Victory Plus, the subscription, which I believe is $100 for the season pass for Rangers games, I think you can also get access to that. I'll have to go double check. If you have one of those TV subscriptions, you can just plug that info in. According to my research, that's what it is. I'll go double check and make sure we get that information to you before the beginning of the season of just exactly what all's going down there. But that is very, very exciting news for Rangers fans. The Rangers Sports Network should be a good thing for Rangers fans, getting more Rangers games into the homes of Rangers fans. I am very, very excited about that. I'm also excited about this feature from Jeff Passan that told us a little bit more about what Jacob deGrom is doing this year to stay healthier. Talk about that and a couple of guys hitting 100 miles an hour in the Rangers game yesterday, why that matters, and why it just be the difference between one of them making the Rangers bullpen and one of them not. All that and more right after this. This show is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site that's made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for that extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks, like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Shout out to the Everydayers making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. I'll be back on Friday talking about Jacob deGrom's second start of the spring, and hopefully, again, weather permitting, we will see Adolis Garcia back in a Rangers spring training game. Both of those guys are slotted to be in the Rangers Thursday game against the Giants at wherever the Giants spring training complex is. So if rain doesn't delay Jacob deGrom's start again, then we'll have a lot to say on Friday. We'll talk about him in just a second, but one more idea that I had. I bandied it about in a Rangers group chat that I'm in of what would the Rangers do if Tyler Mahle is just done. Again, this is all very preemptive. The Rangers are very much saying, hey, it's just minor. Don't freak out, but it's spring training, and even though the Rangers have had one of their top prospects undergo Tommy John surgery, it feels like there have been, thankfully, a big lack of injuries. Knock on wood again. The Rangers hadn't had too many setbacks with injuries. They've had oblique injuries to Wyatt Langford and Adolis Garcia, but both of them are projected to be ready for opening day. Everybody who was projected to make the opening day roster is projected to be just fine in terms of health-wise. But maybe the Rangers kick the tires on a Jordan Montgomery trade. He's still projected to not make the Arizona Diamondbacks opening day rotation. I think that he could be pretty solid for the Rangers as maybe a number 4, maybe again at best number 3. I don't know that he's going to go, beast mode like he did down the stretch for the Rangers in 2023 and in the postseason with the Rangers, but I think it could be a decent depth piece if the Arizona Diamondbacks eat a decent portion of that contract. I think that the reunion could make a whole lot of sense. I think Mike Maddox knows him very well and knows how to get the most out of him. I think, pitching to Jonah Heim again could be helpful. I don't know. Maybe I'm just spitballing some things right now, and I think that it definitely is something the Rangers would consider. That would definitely push them into that luxury tax threshold, which, again, they are so terrified of getting into. It's not my money, so it's very easy to spend it. I don't know that the Rangers are going to do that, but just something to consider. And I'm sure the Rangers have at least considered it. I'm not saying they're actually going to do it or that they've even actually talked to the Diamondbacks about it, but I'm sure in the back of Chris Young's mind, he's like, hey, maybe that Jordan Montgomery guy would be nice to have back if we can't have Tyler Mahle this season. But we're talking about some more pitching. We're talking about some guys who hit triple digits. The Rangers had 3 guys who made the gun read 100 miles an hour in the game yesterday. That was Jack Leiter. Again, 99.8 will make the stadium gun read 100 miles an hour, even though it's not 100 on the dot. But they also had Emiliano Teodo, who, again, he does that. It's not completely surprising. He hit up to 100.8 miles per hour. He's gone as high as 104 miles an hour, so that doesn't really faze me, especially when he's only throwing 11 pitches in a perfect inning of work. But the guy who did make me turn my head, that was Marc Church. I want to talk about Emiliano Teodo first, because he looked fantastic. Let's look at his pitch count, his pitch repertoire, whatever it was, the pitch chart. That's the term that I was looking for. Look at where those pitches are. Look at them. Look at how close to the strike zone they are. Almost all of them in the strike zone. Emiliano Teodo, the guy who just did not throw strikes at all. Not only are they strikes, but they're quality strikes. I am just giddy at that outing. Granted, he got a couple of weak groundouts. He didn't have, 3 up, 3 down, 3 strikeouts, but it was a perfect inning of work. It was 11 pitches. And again, look at those strikes. Look at the slider specifically, how it's right there on the edges of the zone. Not hanging out there in the middle. The 2-seam fastball, look at that living there on the edge of the zone. Look at those 2 sliders just right at the bottom of the zone, right below it. Only one pitch that really got away from him. The rest of them, quality pitches. On a guy who sits 99 miles an hour, can get all the way up there to 101, 102. I don't know if we'll be seeing him gas it up to 103 or 104, but that possibility is in there. And also the slider, so freaking good. This just made me so happy. He was in the zone 64% of the time with his pitches. 64%. That's incredible. The zone contact rate, they're only making contact with swings that they've made at pitches in the zone 2/3 of the time. That's well below league average. That's how nasty his stuff is. This just made me so freaking giddy, as did a guy who had never hit 100 before in a game that I had seen, that I even heard about. That's right, Marc Church. Dialed it all the way up there to 100.5 miles an hour, sitting 98 with the fastball. That's up a tick and a half from where it was last year. Actually, it's up 1.7 ticks. It averaged 98.1 miles per hour. Last year, 96.4. The slider also up almost 2.5 miles an hour, averaging 89, whereas last year it was 87. Those are all very, very good things. He was also in the zone. Look at where he's living in that zone. Also busting out a new pitch. Not quite Jack Leiter's level of changeup. This is a splinker, as he called it, a cross between a splitter and a sinker. This is a third pitch which he has not had. I can't remember the name of the pitcher that he worked with, the former Major League Baseball pitcher in the Atlanta area. Spent a lot of time in the big leagues. Marc Church, also from the Atlanta area, as is Kumar Rocker. There's some bond there. Not a whole lot of black pitchers in Major League Baseball. This is a former black pitcher. There's a great story. Go read it by Evan Grant. It was about Black History Month and the bond that Marc Church and Kumar Rocker have of just there not being a whole lot of black pitchers in baseball. And these two could be very, very good for the Rangers for a long time. A lot of swings and misses on that changeup. No swings and misses, but it looked nasty. Excuse me. I thought there were more swings and misses on that changeup. But either way, a scoreless inning for Marc Church, running it up there. Slider is one of the nastiest pitches in this Rangers system, and I think for sure, he, not just because of this one outing, not just because of the numbers in spring training, but because Marc Church has been really freaking good. That is why I am very confident that he is going to make this Rangers opening day roster, and he should. And if Emiliano Teodo keeps pitching like this, I mean, the Rangers signed 5 guys for their Major League pen. Again, not a whole lot of them with massive, massive upside, but I think all of them will at least be pretty good. I think statistically, one of them will probably be not great because that's just kind of the way relievers go. But at this point, Emiliano Teodo might take one of those guys' spots if they aren't pitching like the Rangers hope they do. He might take one of their spots in this bullpen because he's just so freaking good. That's how good Emiliano Teodo has been. That's how good Marc Church has been. I mean, these guys are really not just knocking kindly, meekly at the door. They are banging that thing down. They might just bulge the door off its hinges. That's how good they've been. That's how excited I am for them, and how high their ceilings are in this bullpen. They could be just straight up incredibly nasty. And Emiliano Teodo, if he starts throwing strikes at that rate, he's unhittable. He's the Rangers closer. I don't know if he's going to do that consistently. This was a nice one-inning outing of him doing that. Again, you got to do it again and again and again to be worthy of that closer spot, to be worthy of making the opening day roster and doing that kind of work consistently. Before the Rangers are just going to throw you in there to the back end of the bullpen and just say, hey, go close out games right now. But Teodo's got that ceiling. Church has got that ceiling, especially if they're, for Church, the velocity is upticking like this. With Teodo, we know the velocity is like this. It's just, can he throw strikes enough? It's kind of like Jack Leiter. They're in a similar place. Granted, Leiter has a much better feel for the zone. He's not as erratic as Teodo, but he's also not running up there to 104. And none of Jack's off-speed, non-fastball pitches are as good as the slurve, slider, curve, whatever you want to call it, for Emiliano Teodo. That's honestly one of the best pitches in this entire system. That's how good Teodo is. And if he's throwing strikes, boy, howdy, look out. And if Marc Church is throwing it like this, and he has that third pitch, that splinker he's still getting a feel for, it is a great, great sign about the state of this Rangers bullpen. Not something I've said about a Rangers bullpen in many, many years. But one guy who's not going to be in the bullpen, stop asking about it. You don't pay $40 million for a closer. That's Jacob deGrom, who is not going to be running up there to 103, 104. He averaged 97.3 miles an hour last year in his 3 starts back in the big league level. There was a big feature by Jeff Passan. I'll probably end up talking more about that feature and what it means for Jacob deGrom on Friday's show after his second start of the spring. But he's kind of dialing back the velocity intentionally to a point where it was in the 2018 season, his best season overall. Again, 2021, there were fits and spurts. There were 15 starts, and he was unhittable. But sitting 99 and a half miles an hour, whatever velocity it actually was, I think it was closer to above 99, it just wasn't tenable for the long haul. He's going to be very, very careful about, not just the workload, not just the pitch count, not just the innings count, but the stress limit of those innings, of just trying to stay healthy for the full season. He wants to make 30 starts. Early on in the season, you might see him go 3, 4, I think 5 innings might be the max, depending on the workload, depending on the stress load of those pitches. But, again, he can just straight up pitch. He's got the location down. That's why it was so unhittable when it was 99. But for the long haul, not just the long haul of the season, and for the long haul of the last 3 seasons of his contract with the Rangers, maybe 4. Again, we'll see what happens in terms of his health this year and even next year. It seems like a bit overeager to say, but he's trying to get back to where he was sitting 96 in 2018 when he had 33 starts, when he had over 200 innings, we had over 250 strikeouts, when he had a 1.70 ERA with the Mets. That was his best full season, full body of work. He's trying to get back there. He's trying to be healthy. He's trying to be the best version of himself. If that's him throwing the fastball a few ticks slower, if that gets him to 30 starts, to 125, 150 innings for the full season, I am absolutely all for that, because he can dominate whether he's throwing 99, whether he's sitting 95, 96. He is just the best pitcher on the planet when healthy, and if he's healthy, whatever velocity that takes, this guy can absolutely dominate you with it. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.